सुप्तेषु जागृति य एष सुप्तेषु जागृति कामं 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 कामपुरुषो पुरुषो निर्विमाणः निर्विमाणः तदेव शुक्रं तद्ब्रह्मा अस्मिन् लोकः शतः सर्वे तदूनाति कश्चन एतद्वैता 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 एतद्वैता.
Thank you. We all are here to acquire the knowledge on GST. GST is not only the tax reform, but it's the reform of the business process. After the applicability of GST, the scenario will be completely different. Our institute has decided to provide a comprehensive knowledge on GST through a workshop of 4 days. Today is the first day, and the eminent speakers are CA DS Agrawal and CA Shivani Saha. I request CA DS Agrawal, please come on the dais. Thank you, sir. Now I request Mr. Ranajit Mukherjee, please come on the dais and present a flower bouquet to Mr. Agrawal. Thank you. CA DS Agrawal is a practicing chartered accountant for the last 26 years and is in service tax practice since 2012. He is a member of various professional associations in Kolkata, and at present he is the convener of West Bengal Study Group on Indirect Taxes formed by ICAI and chairman of the Indirect Tax Committee of DTPA and BBD BAG CA Study Circle, and also the treasurer of Direct Taxes Professionals Association for the year 2016 and 2017. During 14-15 and 15-16, he was the deputy convener of DTPA CA Study Circle. He regularly contributes to professional journals on service tax and GST and has delivered lectures on the topic of GST and service tax at various forums. Today the topic for our workshop is levy and exemptions under GST and time and place of supply. Mr. Agrawal will speak on levy and exemption under GST. Now I request Mr. Agrawal, please come on.
CA Binaji Yadodia, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to each one of you. The topic for today's discussion, which has been allotted to me, is levy and exemption under GST. I am going to cover the basics of GST during next 75 minutes of my presentation. And after that, Shivani will take over and discuss time and place of supply provisions. Friends, before this demonetization drive by our Prime Minister PM Narendra Modi, there was no doubt that GST will be rolled out from 1st of April 2017. Now, how many of you feel that it will be rolled out as such? Do you have any doubt that it won't be rolled out as such? It will defer? Both yes and no. What is it? Deferred. I am also keeping my finger crossed. Actually, even the Finance Minister Jaitley has once said that the maximum time to introduce GST can be up to 16 September 2017. In fact, the Constitutional Amendment Act, which was brought in on 16 September 2016, it has a time period of 1 year within which GST has to be brought in. Because the existing law will continue till that time. Coming to my topic for today's discussion, levy and exemption under GST. This is the agenda which I am going to cover in next 75 minutes. Why constitutional amendment was required to bring GST? Why there was a need to bring constitutional amendment to bring a GST? Why it was not simply brought in as a finance bill? What GST actually means? What is a taxable event under GST? As you know, there are 3 different types of taxable events under present law. In case of excise, service tax and VAT CST. So what is the taxable event under GST going to be? What are the existing taxes which will be subsumed in GST? And what are the taxes which will be levied under GST? Even after introduction of GST, there are lots of taxes which will continue to be levied. So we will see what are the existing taxes which will continue even after GST is introduced. Then I'll discuss a levy of tax, the charging section for this, what are the GST rates going to be. Then the taxable person under GST, who is the person liable to pay GST, that I'll discuss. The reverse charge provisions, as we know, in service tax there reverse charge provision is there. In case of certain notified services, the recipient has to pay service tax under reverse charge. Same provision is continuing under GST also, whether it is applicable on goods also, we will see. Then I discuss composition scheme under GST and finally the exemptions under GST. Now, coming to the first item of my agenda, why constitutional amendment was required to bring GST? Anybody? Why there was a need to bring constitutional amendment? So this is going to be an interactive session and it won't be a monologue actually, one side communication won't be there. So please feel free to ask questions.
Empowering central government to charge state tax.
Empowering central government to charge sales tax, state taxes.
So states also have power to charge tax under our system. So many taxes will be subsumed in center. So that is why GST is needed.
So central will be empowered to levy state taxes. That's why this constitutional amendment is required. Anybody else? There are 2 teams, A and B. From this side, both answers came from this side only.
State government has power to improve the service tax.
Pardon?
State government does not have the power to charge the service tax.
Okay.
That's why it required the amendment, the constitutional amendment, for giving the power to state government to charge the service tax.
And you said rightly said that the power to drive, the power to levy taxes comes from Article 246 at present. What it says, the central government shall be empowered to levy taxes in respect of the matters specified in list 1 of 7th schedule, right? And in respect of certain matters which are specified in list 2 of the 7th schedule, only the state government shall be entitled to, empowered to levy taxes. there is no provision for levy of GST at present, right? So before the constitutional amendment, 101st constitutional amendment, there was no such provision. Hence there was a need. Under existing provision, central government, as you rightly said, cannot levy any tax on inter-state sale of goods, right? And similarly, states cannot levy any tax on services. Hence, there was a need, because under GST, both center and state will have concurrent taxing power. And that's why this Article 246A was inserted in our constitution. And it says, under this, both central and state shall be empowered to levy tax on interstate supply of goods and services, right? And in case of interstate supply of goods and services, only the central government shall be empowered to levy tax. What is GST? So with each slide I will be asking questions. What GST actually means, though it is mentioned there, it's a tax on supply of goods and services. Anything else? It's a tax on supply of goods and services. And how it works? It works through a tax credit mechanism by which the taxes which have been paid at the previous level, previous stage, is allowed to be set off with your subsequent tax liability, right? So if you have paid input tax of 100 rupees at the previous stage, and at the next stage your output tax liability is say 110, you can set off that 100 rupees with 110 and only balance 10 rupees you are required to pay, right? It's a tax on supply of goods and services. And under GST, actually it is also known as last point retail tax, because it's ultimately the last consumer who bear the brunt of this tax. So it is also known as last point retail tax. What is at the pyramid, you see the goods and services are the base, because it's a tax on supply of goods and services. So what exactly is meant by goods and what is meant by services, that is very important to understand. Meaning of goods and services. Goods defined in section 2, subsection 48 of Model GST law. What it says, goods means all kind of movable property, including securities, growing crops, crafts, things attached to following part of the land which are agreed to be secured under a supply or under a contract of supply. And there is an expansion to this section 2, subsection 48, which says goods shall not include intangible property. Right? Now there is a question. The main part of the definition says goods includes securities, right? Shares in demat forms are securities, isn't it? But you can't see it, it's intangible. An expression to section 242, subsection 48 says goods shall not include intangible property. So where this will go? Shares in demat form. There is a confusion there. There seems to be some drafting anomaly here, which needs to be corrected. Like at one stage they are saying that goods include security, at the stage expression is saying goods doesn't include intangible property.
Shares can't be called intangible simply because they are not seen.
It's in demat form you can't, intangible property they are defined. Tangible property means something you can touch or feel. Right? If shares in demat form, how you can touch and feel it?
That means your bank balance is also intangible property.
The bank balance you can, if you withdraw the money you can touch it.
How can you
Right?
touch your bank balance?
No, but when you withdraw the money, definitely you can touch it.
Then in the same way you can remat your shares and touch it.
Pardon?
You can remat your shares.
Remit.
Dematerialized can always be rematerialized.
If you rematerialize it, how it possible? You want to say that it will again be into physical form.
Yes, it can be done.
If it is in physical form, that is very much covered.
The same thing.
Then it says goods include tangible securities. Then it will be very much covered, sir. Whatever shares are in physical form, that are securities, and that is very much covered within the meaning of securities. Coming to the second part, securities, services. The definition of services says everything other than goods is service. So what is not goods will become automatically a service. And here too, they say the service will include intangible property. If that be so, as I am saying, sales intimate form becomes intangible property by means of this definition. Nowhere they have said what is meant by where the immovable property will go. Immovable property is not goods because it's not a movable property, right? Security says everything other than goods is services. They have not said anything by way of explanation or anything else where this immovable property will go. Services related to immovable property, fine, that will be service. But if you sell a property, immovable property, whether it becomes service by means of this definition. If you go strictly by this definition, immovable property becomes service. Here too, there seems to be some drafting anomaly which needs to be corrected. They are discussing the draft, there are two bills, GST and IGST bill and compensation bill. They are already deliberating on this today itself, and in the next GST Council meeting on 2nd and 3rd, it will be taken up and then placed before the Parliament. So it is, we are expecting, CA Institute is also given lots of suggestions there, and we are expecting that all these type of drafting anomalies will be eliminated. We say that GST is a tax on supply of goods and services. Whether it will be applicable on all goods and services, or will there be some exemption sort of? Anybody?
Large number of items have been left out.
Not yet. They have not come out with any exemption list so far. They are deliberating on the exemption list. Officers from the central and state government, they are saying that almost about 80 items will be in the exemption list. Excise list at present consists of at least 300 items and 90 items in the VAT list. They are pruning it to almost 80 items. There is an exemption by clause 12A of Article 366. Article 366 is the definition section in our constitution, and clause 12A says, defines GST. It says GST means a tax on supply of goods and or services, excluding taxes on alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So by way of this definition itself, alcoholic liquor for human consumption has been kept outside the ambit of GST. Second exclusion is by clause 5 of Article 279 capital A. Article 279 capital A deals with constitution of GST Council, and clause 5 thereof gives power to the GST Council to recommend a future date in respect of petrol and petroleum products. There are 5 items there: crude petroleum, HST, petrol, natural gas, and aviation turbine fuel. These 5 items, GST will be levied on these items, but it will levy from a future date as may be recommended by the GST Council. So for the time being, no GST on these 5 items. They have not covered lubricants here. They are not covered except these 5 items. If say petroleum is dealing in some other item, petroleum products, that will be covered under GST. Then, as he rightly pointed out, there will be an exemption list. Those items will be outside the purview of GST by way of exemption. And then, if you are below the threshold limit, no GST will be levied on those items. As I said that GST is a tax on supply of goods and services, right? So what supply actually means? In GST, as we see, under the existing law, manufacture is a taxable event under excise, right? In service tax, provision of service is the taxable event, and in case of VAT and CST, the sale is the taxable event. Under GST, the supply is going to be the taxable event. Manufacture as a taxable event will not remain there. So what supply actually means, it's very important to understand. And the irony is, the word supply itself has not been defined. What they provided in section 3 of the model GST law is an inclusive definition of supply. They don't say the supply means, but they say supply includes. And the Supreme Court has also held that if there is an inclusive definition of a term, it only expands the meaning of the term which precedes it. So supply itself has not been defined and an inclusive definition of a term has been given. So meaning thereby anything and everything can be included within the meaning of supply. Supply includes all forms of supply. There are three parts, section 3(1) A, B, C. There are three parts in this definition. First is supply includes all forms of supply, such as, then they have given 8 items: sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease, disposal. These 8 items. You see the way they have drafted the definition of supply. They start with all forms of supply. Then again they say such as, then 8 items they specified: made or agreed to be made by a person in the course of furtherance of his business. So there has to be a consideration, and it is to be in the course of furtherance of business. Can you hear me? It has to be in the course of furtherance of 2 conditions. It has to be a consideration, and it has to be in the course of furtherance of business. This is the first part. Can you give me some example of exchange? Exchange is covered in the supply here. You go to market, they are exchanging the old TV with the new one. This sort of transactions are covered here. Barter, exchange of one goods with another, right? The second part is import of services. Here they mentioned import of services, whether or not for a consideration and whether or not in the course of furtherance of business. The first one was for a consideration. The second is whether or not for a consideration and whether or not in the course of furtherance of business. Meaning thereby, even if you import a service for your personal use, it will be covered within the meaning of supply. If you receive an advice from one of a friend or your brother, or say, who is residing abroad, then that will also be covered within the meaning of import of services if you go by this definition, and it will fall within the meaning of supply, and GST will be applicable on that. The saving grace is, while defining the taxable person, they mentioned, because in case of import of services, reverse charge is applicable, right? In case of import, reverse charge is applicable. So they mentioned that if when reverse charge is applicable, in that case, the recipient of the service, if it is for personal use, then up to a certain threshold, no, he will not be considered a taxable person. Say, अभी उन्होंने लिमिट दी नहीं है. Suppose they say कि up to 10,000 rupees, if you import something for personal use, you won't be considered a taxable person. Hence, no GST on that. Third part of the definition, Schedule 1 supply. They are given a list of 5 items in Schedule 1 on which GST will be applicable even if there is no consideration. The first, they started with for a consideration, second, whether with or without consideration, and the third, without consideration. So they are covering everything actually. What these 5 items are? Permanent transfer or disposal of business assets. Can you give me some example?
Entire company is sold to somebody else.
Company sold to absolutely transfer of business assets, right? Sold to someone because under GST, your registration is PIN based, right? 15-digit registration number will be given GST number. It is PIN based, state based. First 2 digit will be your state number, then 10 digit will be your PAN number, then entity code, blank code, and check digit. Because it is a PIN based registration number, so whenever you transfer something to somebody else, as he is saying, it means you are transferring your business to somebody else who is having a different PAN number. right? So it will fall, and it may be a case of gift. What you are saying, when he is transferring his company without concession, he is gifting to somebody, say to his son-in-law. He is gifting his business to him who is having a different PAN number. In that case, though it is without concession, GST it will be considered as supply and GST will be applicable on that.
So on all gifts you are saying the GST will be applicable. Suppose
If there is a case of transfer of business assets, if it is your personal assets, it's not covered.
In this case, say a person is a trader in shares. He has closing stock of shares. They are business assets, and he gives out of those shares to somebody. And that means the transfer of business assets.
He is transferring without concession or with
Say he is
concession.
giving
with
gift.
a gift without
If he is gifting, it will be covered here. Say you have a computer, right? You buy a new computer, you want to dispose of your old computer. Your employee said that sir, ये computer मेरे को दे दीजिए, right? You didn't charge anything, without concession you have gifted that, given that computer to him. Disposal of business asset, fall in the meaning of supply. तो एक तो आप गिफ्ट कर रहे हो, दूसरा उस पर टैक्स भी भर रहे हो. Second is temporary application of business assets to a private or non-business use. Example sir, इधर से कुछ नहीं आ रहा है. Temporary application of business assets to a private or non-business use. Sir, example sir. Sir, this side. Temporary application. Permanent application नहीं. Permanent is the first part. Temporary application. Use of computer for personal use. Yeah, that is the case of temporary use of temporary application of business assets. भी आपने अपने एम्प्लॉय को कंप्यूटर मोबाइल देते हैं ना, लैपटॉप दिया, आजकल बिग फर्म में सब में देते हैं ना, लैपटॉप मतलब बांधने वाला हिसाब होता है एक्चुअली, तो आप देते हो 24 आवर्स के एम्प्लॉय हो गए आप उनके, राइट? वो तो ऐसा कहीं लिखा हुआ नहीं है कि भी आप इसको पर्सनल यूज नहीं कर सकते. कांट मेक अ कॉल टू योर वाइफ यूजिंग दैट फोन, करोगे ना, तो दैट बिकम्स टेम्पररी एप्लीकेशन ऑफ बिजनेस एसेट्स टू योर प्राइवेट यूज. इट बिकम्स सप्लाई.
In an example I mentioned now that a closing stock of shares. Say there is a person to whom I have loaned certain shares on loan. I have not sold it. After some time he returns back those shares to me. तो लोन पर भी GST लग जाएगा क्योंकि नॉन बिजनेस यूज है.
टेम्पररी सर आपने दिया,
हाँ टेम्पररी दिया.
टेम्पररी एप्लीकेशन ऑफ बिजनेस एसेट्स है.
तो मेरे पास क्लोजिंग स्टॉक ऑफ शेयर्स है, आपके पास शेयर का शॉर्टेज है, आपको डिलीवरी देना है,
ओके,
आपका ओवरसोल्ड हो गया, आपका शेयर नहीं है, मैंने आपको लोन दे दिया.
आप शेयर में डील करते हो सर?
मैं शेयर में कोई भी हो, मैंने लोन दे दिया आपको, तो वो तो टेम्पररी एप्लीकेशन ऑफ बिजनेस एसेट फॉर नॉन बिजनेस यूज हो गया.
नहीं, कैन यू से इट्स फॉर नॉन बिजनेस यूज?
नॉन बिजनेस यूज हो गया.
नहीं, आप जिसको दे रहे हो वेदर ही इज यूजिंग फॉर पर्सनल बिजनेस यूज और नॉन बिजनेस यूज.
पर्सनल यूज, मान लीजिए दैट पर्सन इज इंडिविजुअल.
हाँ ठीक है, मे बी सर
तो सर्विस
कम हो
चार्ज
सकता है
पे लग जाएगा.
सर. Sir, there are certain issues which are they are vaguely they are used because the issue is who is going to monitor, who is going to administer this type of transactions. Department, उनको कैसे पता चलेगा कि आपने सर कॉल किया अपनी वाइफ को, वो हिसाब रखेंगे उसका? If possible, theoretical पर्पस से कुछ चीजें तो हम दे दी है, लेकिन प्रैक्टिकली कितना पॉसिबल होगा इज डिफिकल्ट टू से. Coming to the third one, services put to a private or non-business use. Example, आपकी CA फर्म है, मोस्ट ऑफ द मेगा सब CA हैं यहाँ पर. क्लाइंट की आप रिटर्न फाइल करते हो, अपनी भी करते हो, उसमें भी that will also be considered supply now. And GST will be applicable on that. Right, sir? So you start paying tax if you file your own return in your own firm.
वाइफ ने घर के लिए कुकिंग की है,
हाँ सर,
ये कुकिंग किया है,
हाँ,
ये will that put as a non-business service?
वाइफ ने घर की कुकिंग की है, बिजनेस यूज कहाँ से यहाँ पर?
The wife is caterer.
वाइफ इज कैटर, ओके, शी हैज ए बिजनेस,
Has a
यस सर,
business of caterer.
बिल्कुल हो जाएगा सर।
And using the beauty.
अच्छा एग्जांपल दिया आपने, आई विल कोट इट इन फ्यूचर डेलीवेशन सर। सर एग्जांपल और भी है ना, इफ यू आर पार्टनर इन आर्किटेक्ट फर्म से, और आप बोले कि अपनी ऑफिस बना रहे हैं, उसको डिजाइन करना है आपको, सर्विस पुट टू ए प्राइवेट यूज कवर्ड। आप अपना घर बना रहे हो, यू आर इंजीनियर, राइट, सर्विसेज पुट टू ए प्राइवेट यूज, जो आप दूसरा को चार्ज करें उस हिसाब से आपको चार्जेस करने पड़ेंगे। उनका एक वैल्यूएशन मेथड सेपरेट है, सेक्शन 15 फिर जीएसटी वैल्यूएशन मेथड है, उस हिसाब से आपको वैल्यूएशन करना होगा। ये सब कई चीजें हैं, मतलब आपने पर्सनल कुकिंग भी की है, उनको कैसे पता चलेगा सर? यहाँ पर इट इज पॉसिबल कि इट विल पुट टू अ पर्सनल यूज, देन ओनली।
Sir, please give an example why this third item has been put.
व्हाई दिस थर्ड आइटम इज पुट?
ये क्यों रखा है इसका?
सर ये आंसर मेरे पास नहीं है सर। वो ऐसा सब बहुत सी चीजें उन्होंने दी है जो हमें भी समझ नहीं आ रहा है कि वो यहाँ पे है क्यों एक्चुअली। दे हैव पुट इन एवरीथिंग एक्चुअली। इशू हियर इज हाउ दे विल मॉनिटर, हाउ दे विल एडमिनिस्टर दिस टाइप ऑफ थिंग्स। लिखने के लिए वो जरूर दे देते हैं, लेकिन प्रैक्टिकली क्या इट्स पॉसिबल? अभी एमडी की बेटी की मैरिज है, दे इज अ फ्लीट ऑफ कार्स इन द कंपनी, वो बोलते हैं यार गेस्ट हाउस मतलब क्या आप एयरपोर्ट से उनको लेके आ जाओ, क्या हुआ? टेम्पररी एप्लीकेशन ऑफ बिजनेस एसेट्स टू ए पर्सनल यूज। हिसाब कौन रखेगा सर उसका?
At the time of calculation, they will do the discretionary power.
कैसे करेंगे सर? इट मे बी सर इनकम टैक्स में जैसे करता है ना सर, 20% एडबैक कर देते हैं, दैट्स सॉर्ट ऑफ।
ऐसे ही करते हैं।
यू मेंटेन अ लॉगबुक सॉर्ट ऑफ। एयरपोर्ट गया था, गेस्ट को लेके आया, और इफ दे से कि आप हमें लॉगबुक दिखाइए, ट्रांसपोर्ट डिपार्टमेंट में लॉगबुक मेंटेन करते हैं ना, वहां पे लिखा कि सर शादी के लिए गए थे, वहां से गेस्ट को लेके आए, देन इफ दे कम अक्रॉस सम एविडेंस, देन इट्स अ डिफरेंट थिंग, अदरवाइज हाउ इट्स पॉसिबल?
Probably this is the reason why PM, Mr. Modi has said all tax laws shall be scrapped. From banking transaction, 1 to 2% will be levied.
Yes. They are saying
If the
that.
tax law
Yes.
goes in this fashion, it's absolutely meaningless.
Actually, sir, by definition of supply, they have given such an inclusive definition, and even if it is not over yet, there are lots of things are there in definition itself. Pardon, sir?
Again, demonetization will come.
Again?
Because of this, again they will generate the black money.
सर जीएसटी में ब्लैक मनीजेशन काफी डिफिकल्ट हो जाएगा।
डिस्क्रिशनरी पावर है ना उनके ऊपर, तो लगाएंगे।
So unless until even 1% is in the GST chain, तो आपके आगे पीछे सब हिसाब पता चल जाएगा सर। If everybody is outside the chain, then manufacturer से लेके रिटेल तक सब outside the chain है, then it's a different story. But even 1% is in the chain, then it will become difficult.
एक अच्छी मछली पूरा तालाब खराब कर देगी।
हाँ सर, ये एकदम सही बात बोल रहे हैं। कहा अभी तक तो ये है कि एक गंदी मछली सारा तालाब खराब करती है, अब लोग एक अच्छी मछली उसमें आ गई, वो सारा तालाब खराब कर देगी। Assets, fourth item, assets retained after deregistration. Suppose your business is not doing well and you want to close down, right? से 20 लाख का टर्नओवर जैसे बोल रहे हो, उससे नीचे आपका टर्नओवर आ गया, अच्छा नहीं कर रहे हो, and you want to close it. That will also be treated as a supply. जो भी आपका स्टॉक है, that will be treated as a supply. You pay, एक तो बिजनेस बंद हो रहा है, ऊपर से टैक्स भी भरेगा। The meaning यहाँ पर्पस क्या है कि सब जो आपकी क्लोजिंग स्टॉक है, वहाँ पे आपने इनपुट क्रेडिट ले रखा है या इनपुट क्रेडिट अवेल कर रखा है उसके ऊपर में, you reverse those input credit. अभी क्या होगा कि there will be 3 types of ledger will be maintained. GST portal पे once you log in, there will be 3 types of ledger there. One will be electronic cash ledger. जो आप पे करते हो टैक्स, that will be shown there. Another will be electronic credit ledger. जो भी आपका इनपुट क्रेडिट है जो आपको मिल रहा है दैट विल कम अप देयर. जैसे किसी ने एंट्री की है और आपका इनपुट क्रेडिट आ रहा है दैट विल शो अप देयर. एंड द थर्ड वन इज इलेक्ट्रॉनिक लायबिलिटी लीजर. आउटपुट टैक्स माइनस इनपुट बैलेंस आपकी लायबिलिटी कितनी है दैट विल देयर. तो व्हाट दे वांट टू से एक्चुअली इफ एसेट्स हेल्ड आफ्टर डी रजिस्ट्रेशन उस पे आपने कोई इनपुट क्रेडिट अवेल किया है यू रिवर्स दैट एंट्री. इफ यू हैव यूटिलाइज्ड दैट क्रेडिट देन यू पे. बाकी जो आउटसाइड आपकी दूसरी जो लायबिलिटी उसे आपने एडजस्ट कर दिया है यू पे टैक्स ऑन दैट.
सर वो जो लेजर आप बता रहे थे वो क्या पार्टी के नाम के साथ आएगा ओनली अमाउंट आएगा इनपुट क्रेडिट का
क्रेडिट डिटेल्स आएगी सर.
मतलब जो जिससे मैंने परचेज कर रखा है उसका नाम भी आएगा.
नाम की सर डिटेल्स आपकी इसमें आ जाएगी. इनवर्ट का जो डिटेल्स आएगी ना आपकी इसमें क्या है कि यू हैव टू फाइल 3 टाइप ऑफ रिटर्न एक्चुअली. सेक्शन 25, 26, 27 आउटवर्ड डिटेल्स ऑफ आउटवर्ड सप्लाई जो आप सेल्स कर रहे हो वो सेक्शन 25 में आपको मंथली बाय 10th आपको फाइल करना है राइट एवरी मंथ. मतलब टोटल 37 रिटर्न्स यू हैव टू फाइल अंडर जीएसटी. तो ह्यूज अपॉर्चुनिटी फॉर चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स. अरे बिजनेस देखो ना सर. अभी तो 2 रिटर्न फाइल करते हो मिनिमम भी देगा तो 37,000 तो दे ही देगा ना. नो हाँ जी सर नहीं सर देना तो पड़ेगा. इफ एवरीबॉडी डिसाइड्स कि इससे नीचे करना नहीं है तो देना तो पड़ेगा. कोशिश करते हैं. डिमोनेटाइजेशन में तो कितना होगा था रिटर्न. So that those 3 ledgers or second ledger will be your returns will be details of inward supplies. Returns are separately discussed होगा. मैं briefly खाली बोल दे रहा हूँ. Inward supplies में जो आपके outward supply जो details फाइल हो रही ना वो automatically will be popped up in inward supply. जो भी supplier आप कहीं से भी purchase कर रहे हो that will automatically come to your inward supply. By 15th आपको इसकी return फाइल करनी पड़ेगी. सब जो उसमें there is some mistakes there तो आप उसको correction करके उसको फाइल करो. 10 तारीख के बाद में वो रिटर्न आपकी डिटेल्स जो है आपके सिस्टम में आएंगी ऑटोमेटिकली पॉपअप होंगी. एंड उसके बाद में आप बाई 15th यू फाइल योर डिटेल्स ऑफ इनवर्ड सप्लाईज एंड बाई 20th इन दोनों का जो प्लस माइनस जो भी है डिटेल्स है दैट विल गो टू योर मंथली रिटर्न. और फिर आपने मंथली रिटर्न फाइल कर दीजिए बाई 20th ऑफ एवरी मंथ. द 5th वन क्लॉज 5 ऑफ शेड्यूल 1 सप्लाई बाई अ टैक्सेबल पर्सन to another word is बहुत important यहाँ पे. To another taxable person or a non-taxable person in the course of furtherance of business. यहाँ पर से इश्यू क्या हो रहा था कि whether branch transfer will be covered or not. Within the state, outside the state, branch transfer, stock transfer जो आप कर रहे हो, whether that will fall within this within clause 5 or not. Yes, sir. It will be covered. Why?
But branch is same tax rate. Same tax.
Takes up one by one, sir. Registration is same or different. Registration is different. Okay. And it's from one person to another. Is it one person to another, sir? The person is same. So it's not from one person to another. No, what I'm saying, is it from one person to another or from one taxable person to another?
Maybe.
No, sir, it can't be maybe.
Yes, sir. The word is taxable person.
The word is not from one person to another. Because person is the word use करते हैं, it means your PAN number is same. तो आप सेल्फ सर्विस करोगे, सेल्फ ट्रांसफर करोगे, they don't come within the purview of this. The word used here is by one taxable person to another taxable person. And taxable person means, मैं उसमें डिटेल्स में बाद में बताऊंगा. Basically अभी आप इतना समझ लो. Taxable person रजिस्ट्रेशन कैसे हो रहा है? आपका पेन बेस्ड हो रहा है, राइट? तो पेन बेस्ड रजिस्ट्रेशन इवन विद इन द स्टेट या आउटसाइड द स्टेट आपका मैंने बताया ना जब 15 डिजिट का रजिस्ट्रेशन नंबर है तो 13 डिजिट योर एंटिटी कोड। तो आपने एक रजिस्ट्रेशन लिया, नंबर विल बी 1, आपने दूसरा रजिस्ट्रेशन लिया, दैट विल नंबर 2 एंड इट कैन गो अप टू 35। तो टैक्सेबल पर्सन रजिस्ट्रेशन वाइज है, जितना आप रजिस्ट्रेशन लोगे उसी हिसाब से आपका टैक्सेबल पर्सन हो गया। विद द सेम पेन यू कैन हैव 35 रजिस्ट्रेशंस। तो एक टैक्सेबल पर्सन दूसरे को यदि कुछ भेज रहा है देन दैट विल कवर्ड। तो यदि कोई ब्रांच ट्रांसफर फ्रॉम से वन स्टेट बंगाल से आप यदि बिहार में भेज रहे हो एंड दे आर हैविंग अ डिफरेंट रजिस्ट्रेशन इन बिहार, ऑब्वियसली दैट प्लेस ऑफ बिजनेस इज देयर, दे विल हैव टू टेक अ रजिस्ट्रेशन फ्रॉम देयर। In that case, it is a supply from one taxable person to another taxable person, and that will fall within the meaning of this fifth one.
What is the reason for 35 allowing physical registration?
Sir, within the same state.
Sir, within the same state
Pardon,
होगा
sir?
within the same state होगा तो within the same state होगा तो
Within the same state.
stock transfer
So, is it the same registration or different registration?
same registration.
Same registration.
Same, because
See, आपने
branch
godown-
is to take another registration.
Say from godown से अपने ऑफिस में
Not
भेजा।
go down. If within the state, I am having 4 branches, one head office. Suppose Durgapur branch is there, so you have to register it.
Sir, within the same state, you have the option to choose one business as your principal place of business and another as your additional place of business.
But they are saying centralized register if you have the multiple vertical business.
There is no centralized registration in GST, sir. No centralized registration.
Yeah, so then for Durgapur branch you have to take the registration.
Not necessarily. Because within the same state, you need one registration only. What you can do, Calcutta head office, you can say your principal place of business and all other place of business as additional place of business. So in that case, because you have the same PAN number, that won't be covered here. But if you have different verticals, right? Say आपका restaurant business है और construction business भी है, and you want 2 separate registration for that, permissible. They will grant you. It's optional. You can have 2 separate registration for that, right? In that case, there will be 2 taxable person. The 2 taxable person also it will fall within the meaning of clause 5. If there will be transfer, it will be taxable. However, it is not unless until there is a compulsion, business compulsion to maintain 2 separate registration, it won't be advisable to go for this. Why?
सर अगर एक में अगर आउटपुट होगा और एक में इनपुट होगा तो सेट अप
एकदम सही. If you have your output tax liability in one business, say construction business में आपके output tax liability और restaurant में आपका input tax credit है. यदि आप 2 separate registration ले लेते हो, you can't set off. दो भी taxable person है, separate registration है, separate liability है. आप आपस में set off नहीं, though you are the same person, but आपस में आप set off नहीं कर सकते. That is not permissible. But if you have one registration only, you can show as 2 units. One is construction unit, one is your restaurant. You can set off. So unless until there is extreme business compulsion to obtain 2 separate registration, it won't be advisable to go for vertical wise registration. Goods are supplied to a job worker, then it won't be treated as supply goods. There is an expression there. Then there is a schedule 2. What it says, in respect of certain matters is specified in Schedule 2. They have specified 6 different matters there. Schedule 2 shall determine what is or is to be considered as supply of goods or supply of services. जो matters वहाँ पे specify किए गए हैं, there is a long list actually. बस supply की आप definition नहीं हो अभी भी. Still they are not finished. इतना कुछ देने के बाद में all forms of supply this that schedule 1 without consideration again schedule 2 there is a long list. इसमें उन्होंने कवर किया, उसमें वो डिसाइड बता रहे हैं कि सर ये सप्लाई ऑफ गुड्स माना जाएगा. इफ दिस इज जैसे ट्रांसफर ऑफ टाइटल गुड्स, इट विल सप्लाई ऑफ गुड्स. आप रेंटिंग कर रहे हो, लीज पे दे रहे हो, लाइसेंस, ये सब जो है दैट विल सप्लाई ऑफ सर्विस. इंफॉर्मेशन टेक्नोलॉजी सॉफ्टवेयर, आईटी सॉफ्टवेयर के केस में क्या था, अभी वैट और सर्विस टैक्स दोनों का इशू था ना. वो बोल रहे हैं कि ये गुड्स है, ये बोला सर्विस है. रेस्टोरेंट केस में बोलते थे कि दोनों, राइट. वर्क्स कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में भी सेम इशू था. नाउ दे आर स्पेशली मेंशन्ड वर्क्स कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, ये रेस्टोरेंट से रिलेटेड जो इश्यूज हैं, सॉफ्टवेयर, ऑल दीज आर सर्विसेज, नो गुड्स. तो वो अब इशू खत्म. क्लब की थी, कोई क्लब, यू आर अ मेंबर देयर, ही सप्लाई, आप जाते हो वहाँ पर, वो दे सप्लाई सम गुड्स, दैट विल बी ट्रीटेड सप्लाई गुड्स. उसमें भी इशू था सर्विसेज का. उन्होंने बोले कि ये सप्लाई गुड्स माना जाएगा. तो देयर लॉन्ग लिस्ट ट्रांसफर है. देन इफ देयर इज जॉब वर्क, इट विल बी ट्रीटेड सप्लाई ऑफ सर्विसेज. तो उन्होंने स्पेसिफिक कर दिया शेड्यूल 2 के अंदर में, देयर इज अ लॉन्ग लिस्ट एंड व्हाट विल ट्रीटेड सप्लाई गुड्स, सप्लाई ऑफ सर्विसेज मेंशन देयर. उसमें कोई आपके पास में ऑप्शन नहीं है. जो उन्होंने लिखा उसमें वो गुड्स या सर्विसेज माना जाएगा. बेसिकली अनलेस एंटिल देयर इज अ रेट डिफरेंस, इट हार्डली मैटर्स आल्सो. यदि आपकी रेट सेम रहती है गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज की, देन इट डजंट मैटर. इट विल मैटर ओनली व्हेन देयर इज अ डिफरेंस इन रेट्स. और पहले अर्लियर इट वाज दैट देयर वोंट बी मल्टीप्लिसिटी ऑफ रेट्स. नाउ दे हैव कम अप विथ डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ रेट्स. 4 रेट्स दे हैव ऑलरेडी अनाउंस्ड. और अभी भी कितने एग्जेम्पशंस और सब चीजें आएंगी. एवरीबॉडी इज लविंग. जैसे उन्होंने रेट अनाउंस की है, ऑल एसोसिएशन स्टार्ट लविंग, इंडस्ट्री स्टार्ट लविंग. सर मेरा आइटम 5% में डाल दो. तो जो उसका रीजन नहीं देते हैं, सर ये मास कंजम्पशन की चीज है. डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ लॉजिक्स एक्सप्लेनेशन इज गोइंग ऑन. So unless until there be a rate difference, there won't be much of a difference. If there be a rate difference between goods and services, then there will be an issue. Then there is a deemed supply. सब बोलने के बाद में लेकिन डीमिंग प्रोविजन भी रखेंगे हम. Transition between principal and agent. If an agent supplies or receives some goods and services on behalf of its principal, then it will be treated as a supply of goods and services. Deeming provision. Aggregator कौन हुआ? Uber, Ola, right? They are known as aggregator. If they provide some service under their own brand name, right, they will be treated as deemed supplier. They will take registration and pay tax. Deeming provision introduced कर दिया because here supplier is the cab driver. You are the recipient of service. So by this deeming fiction, they have been made liable to pay GST. They have to take registration and pay GST. इतना कुछ होने के बाद में भी they are having some further power. Central government and state government, on the recommendation of the GST Council, they may declare which item will be treated as supply of goods and not as a supply of service. Which item will be treated as supply of service and not as a supply of goods. And then third one, neither as supply of service nor as supply of goods. मतलब कोई चीज छोड़ा नहीं है इन्होंने actually. And if you compare this with the Malaysian GST law, they simply say supply means this. And there may be some exclusion there, but they are very categorically saying supply means this. Not so many schedules, these, that. Because the way it has been drafted, supply includes, it will lead to lots of litigation actually. So वही actually उन्होंने क्या कि सब जगह से उठा लिया. थोड़ा यहाँ से, थोड़ा वहाँ से, सब जगह से ले लिया ना. तो they made a खिचड़ी of everything. अब ये Canadian law में देखो definition, लास्ट की जो आई